reaction from Joyce saying at the weekend. Was it a result you expected, and what was your reaction?
It's exactly how I called it. I said Zhang would win inside 6 rounds. Many reasons for that. Firstly, because I think Joyce's punch resistance, when people say it's gone, I definitely don't think it's gone, but it's nowhere near what it was. And this is a fighter that his biggest attribute is his chin and his toughness. And when that goes, you're not the same fighter. I think to come in 2 stone heavier, the first fight he was light on his feet but couldn't get out of the way. If you come in 2 stone heavier, all you're really saying is, I'm just going to steamroll him. But he didn't have the confidence to even walk Zhang down, and he was just a sitting duck. And he just got peppered left, right and centre. So, 1, I think his confidence has gone. 2, I think his punch resistance isn't what it was. I think that's the best way to explain it. And I knew Zhang would win that fight and win it. And it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But it was easy, and it was a terrible knockout. And, you know, I mean, when people talk about retiring, it all depends on what the fighter wants or where they want to be. Do you understand? Like, I think Joyce is 38. Is he? You know, he wanted to be world heavyweight champion. That's done now. He's never going to be world heavyweight champion. He's not going to be in any big fights yet. But he probably has got a contract with Frank Warren for a couple more fights. So if a fighter, you know, I don't think this is a fighter that we're seeing shot to pieces, but I think it's a fighter that's ability to absorb punishment is definitely going. And when that happens at that age, you look at the punishment they'll sustain, particularly in heavy spars. I mean, I've seen AJ spar Joe Joyce. It's a massacre. But Joe never stopped coming. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was competitive, but you're watching it like this. Oh my God. And, you know, you don't want to see those kind of fights. And if you, as much as Joe Joyce gets hit, if you start seeing him getting wobbled by lesser fighters, it's sad to see. So I never think, I get asked all the time, should he retire? I don't like saying you should retire because it's an individual choice. You know, if I started becoming a little bit, I don't know, you know, mentally not as sharp, or, you know, I've suffered from being serious, you know, like some kind of dementia, but I wanted to keep going, even if I couldn't perform at the level, it's up to you to do that, you know, and it's your life. So I think.
Wow, those are the words of Eddie Hearn. As you heard him say, he's seen the sparring between Joshua and Joyce. And he said Joshua massacred Joe Joyce. But he kept coming. And let me counterpunch. I think he said that to demonstrate, give you an example of Joe Joyce on where he was punch resistance wise versus where he is. Because when he was getting massacred by Anthony Joshua, right? And I'll talk about that more in depth in a second. He kept coming, and it showed you the difference between now and what he wasn't able to take when he got hit by Zhang just last weekend. So, you know, punch resistance isn't where it used to be, according to Eddie Hearn. And let me counterpunch. I think Joe Joyce's punch resistance is in question, but I do think eventually it's going to take a toll and it won't be the same. You know, I've seen fighters with good chins, like Fernando Vargas, which was from another era, okay? Fernando Vargas was from a whole different era. But the era that he was in, he fought guys like Winky Wright, boxers, boxer punchers like Ike Horte, which was a very close fight. You know, he fought guys like that until he went up there against like guys like Trinidad. Well, when he fought guys like Trinidad was the one that actually broke that chin. Okay, that resistance gave way that night he fought Trinidad. Okay, and after that he was really never the same. You know, and I look at Fernando Vargas. You know, he's a guy that, like, he wasn't like, if you look at him now, he's slower. You can tell the punches have took a toll on him. Okay, so, you know, his first loss to Trinidad, yeah, that chin went hard because he went down 1, 2. He went down 5 times in that fight. He dropped Trinidad in the fourth. But he was never the same after that. And you know how I know he wasn't the same? Is because he fought Wilfredo Rivera after that and got caught with, like, it was a solid shot. But, you know, Rivera's a guy he didn't really have. I mean, dude, he wasn't known for a knockout puncher. You know what I mean? He was nowhere near the punching power as guys like Ike Corte or Trinidad. And he went down solid. And it just shows you how nerves and punch resistance and your neuro has to be right. Everything has to be flowing, but when it goes, it goes. That may be Joe Joyce. Saying all that to say this, giving you an example of Fernando Vargas and everything, because Fernando had a good chin. And then by the time of that, you know, then you had Sugar Shane Mosley, then you had Oscar De La Hoya, then you had Ricardo Mayorga for Fernando. So Fernando went through a lot of punishment. And that's exactly why I feel that Eddie Hearn is talking about Joe Joyce. Because, see, yeah, Joe Joyce now, I think he could get all the fights he wanted to. He could get the Fury fights and the, you know, the Anderson fights, the Jared Anderson fights. He could get, you know, a rematch with Daniel Dubois and things like that. But then at what toll now? Because his chin is in question. And Eddie is right. I mean, he didn't really look like he was committed to go in. And I think now it will be more so because the time I think when he was trying to throw a punch, he got caught with a shot with a more explosive puncher. You know what I mean? It was like Jeet Kune Do with Bruce Lee. It was like the way of the intercepting fist. And I know Joe Joyce knows about that. You know what I mean? Because he was throwing a punch and gets chinned. And then he's down and he's never been there before. So that may have a totally different effect on him. You know? But as I promised you guys, back to the sparring of Anthony Joshua and Joe Joyce, I'll say this. I don't know if Joe Joyce took like that much of an ass beating from Joshua. Now, from the clips that we've seen, yeah, it appeared that way. But what I've learned about sparring, okay, and bringing things out of context, you have to see the whole thing. It's like telling half the truth. You know what I mean? Looking at clips is like just showing you what you want people to see. Then based on that, and I can understand Joe Joyce feeling disrespected because, you know, Joe Joyce and Anthony Joshua didn't have beef. I didn't really think Joe had a problem with anybody. So I didn't really understand the reasoning behind releasing footage of Joe Joyce getting, you know, pieced up by Anthony Joshua in those particular clips. So, I don't know if he did that the whole round or rounds and rounds after rounds and rounds. But, you know, according to Eddie Hearn, okay, being a witness, you know, he said, you know, he absolutely massacred Joe Joyce. So we just but then Joe kept coming. And then now Joe is a guy that is in question. But I would like to see all of that footage. You know what I mean? The whole thing. So we can see what Joe was doing and then plus what they were working on. Because just because you got a sparring partner in there don't mean he is at liberty to go full octane at you. Okay, so just putting that out there. You guys tell me what you think of Eddie Hearn stating that Anthony Joshua absolutely massacred Joe Joyce in sparring. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.